Janitor calms autistic child without knowing who his father was. Support the channel by leaving your like and comment, and let's get to our story. The sharp scent of hospital-grade bleach mingled with the gentle fragrance of lavender air fresheners drifted through the corridors of Mercy Children's Hospital, while the soft echo of footsteps resonated against the polished marble floors in the hushed stillness of dawn. It was 3:17 in the morning when Emma Claire Watson pushed her cleaning cart down the 5th floor of Chicago's most prestigious pediatric hospital. At 28, her warm hazel eyes still held the tenderness of someone who dreamed of caring for people, though now her gentle hands gripped mops instead of stethoscopes. The faded grey cotton uniform, washed so many times it had lost its original color, stood in stark contrast to the sophisticated environment surrounding her. Walls lined with Italian travertine marble, imported crystal chandeliers, and contemporary art pieces that cost more than she earned in an entire year. Emma paused in front of room 512, adjusting the wireless earbuds that played soft melodies to make the long work hours more bearable. This was her 4th year working at this hospital, and she knew every corner, every sound, every routine of this place. She knew that at 3 in the morning, the hallways remained completely empty, illuminated only by emergency lighting, casting elongated shadows on the walls. She knew that Dr. Patterson always left his coffee cup half empty on his desk. She knew that the head nurse, Dr. Margaret Foster, often worked late and always offered her a kind smile when they crossed paths in the corridors. What Emma didn't know was that this dawn, her entire existence was about to be completely transformed. She was wiping the stainless steel handrail with a damp cloth when she heard a sound that made her stop instantly. It was a quiet crying, muffled, coming from the end of the hallway. It wasn't the typical cry of a child. It was something more distressing, desperate, as if all the pain in the universe was concentrated in those sobs. Emma removed her earbuds, her maternal heart awakening immediately. During her incomplete years in nursing school, she had learned to recognize different types of infant crying, and this one sounded like pure panic. Abandoning her cart, Emma walked silently toward the sound. Her white sneakers barely made noise against the cold floor. As she got closer, she could distinguish better. It was definitely a small child, and from the tone and intensity, seemed to be going through some kind of crisis. Her protective instinct, which had been sharpened since childhood when she cared for her younger siblings before losing them in the same accident that took her parents, spoke louder than any work protocol. Turning the corner near the elevators, Emma encountered the scene that would make her heart clench. A small boy, about 6 years old, was sitting on the cold corridor floor, leaning against the marble wall. His little legs were curled against his chest, and he was rocking back and forth in a repetitive and desperate movement. The boy had light brown hair disheveled and wore blue dinosaur pajamas that looked expensive, but were now wrinkled and damp with tears. In his small hands, he clutched tightly a green plush dinosaur, as if it were his only anchor in an ocean of confusion. "Hey there, little guy," Emma whispered, crouching slowly at a respectful distance. She had read about autism during her nursing studies and recognized the signs: the repetitive movement, the fixation on the toy, the apparent disconnection from the surrounding environment. "Are you okay?" The boy didn't respond, but his sobs intensified. Emma noticed he avoided eye contact, keeping his gaze fixed on the plush dinosaur. She remembered the techniques she had learned in college about how to approach children in crisis, especially those on the autism spectrum. Slow movements, soft voice, no touching without permission. "What a beautiful dinosaur you have there," she said, sitting on the floor a few meters away, not caring that her grey uniform might get dirty on the cold surface. "It looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, doesn't it? They were very big and brave." For a brief moment, the boy's rocking decreased slightly. Emma perceived she had captured his attention, even if indirectly. She looked around, searching for some clue about how this child had ended up there alone in the middle of the night. There was no one nearby, No sound of footsteps or voices. It was as if he had simply appeared there, lost and frightened. "My name is Emma," she continued, keeping her voice low and comforting. "And you, what's your name, little warrior?" The boy finally looked up for a fraction of a second, revealing bright green eyes swollen from crying so much. But as quickly as he made eye contact, he looked down again, clutching the dinosaur even tighter against his chest. Emma felt her heart compress. There was something in those green eyes that seemed strangely familiar to her, though she was sure she had never seen this boy before. A strange sensation of déjà vu invaded her, but she pushed it away, focusing on the child who clearly needed help. "Are you cold?" she asked, noticing that the thin pajamas didn't offer much warmth in the air-conditioned hospital corridor. Without waiting for an answer, Emma took off her grey wool cardigan, one of the few decent pieces of clothing she owned, and carefully extended it over the boy's legs, being careful not to touch him directly. Tyler, though she didn't yet know his name, stopped rocking completely when he felt the warm cardigan over his legs. The soft scent of cheap fabric softener, mixed with a delicate wildflower perfume that Emma wore, seemed to calm him a little. He looked up again, this time maintaining eye contact for a few longer seconds. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Emma asked gently. "I used to love them too when I was little. My favorite was the Brontosaurus, those big ones with long necks. They were gentle and only ate plants." To her surprise, the boy made a small noise, not exactly a word, but a sound that indicated he was listening. Emma smiled, feeling she was making some progress. "Does your dinosaur have a name?" she continued, knowing that autistic children frequently develop deep bonds with transitional objects. "He looks very special." Tyler looked at the plush dinosaur, then at Emma, and back at the toy. Slowly, very slowly, he whispered a single word: "Buddy." His voice was hoarse from crying so much, but it was the first word he had said. Emma felt a wave of relief and tenderness. "Buddy is a perfect name," she said, smiling genuinely. "He takes care of you, doesn't he?" The boy nodded almost imperceptibly, and Emma realized she was gaining his trust. She looked around again, worried. Such a small child shouldn't be alone in the hospital at this hour. Where were his parents? How had he gotten there? "Tyler, Tyler, where are you?" The male voice echoed through the corridors, loaded with desperation and panic. It was a deep voice, educated, with that typical intonation of someone accustomed to being obeyed, but now trembling with concern. The rapid footsteps approached, and Emma could hear other voices joining the search. Nurses, security guards, people running from one side to the other. "Tyler, please, son, where are you?" The boy, Tyler, apparently, had an immediate reaction upon hearing the voice. His body tensed, and he began rocking again, more intensely this time. Tears started rolling down his pink cheeks again. Hey, it's okay," Emma whispered quickly, realizing that the agitation of voices and footsteps was making the boy even more distressed. "It sounds like someone is looking for you. Is it your daddy?" Tyler didn't respond, but his crying intensified. Emma made an instinctive decision. Slowly, very carefully, she moved a little closer and began singing softly a lullaby her mother used to sing to her when she was little. "Sleep now, my baby. Mama's here with you. Dream of little angels who came to watch over you." Her voice was low and melodious, almost a whisper. Tyler gradually stopped crying, fixing his gaze on Emma with an intensity that surprised her. It was as if that music was exactly what he needed to hear. "Tyler! Tyler, are you there?" The voice was closer now, turning the corner of the corridor. Emma heard the footsteps approaching rapidly and instinctively prepared to explain the situation. She didn't want them to think she was doing something inappropriate. After all, she was just a janitor found with the lost son of some important patient at the hospital. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for what happened next. A tall man turned the corner running, almost stumbling in his desperation to find the child. He wore a wrinkled dark suit, as if he had dressed hastily, and his dark brown hair was disheveled. When his eyes fixed on Tyler, An expression of pure relief took over his face. "Tyler, thank God," he exclaimed, approaching quickly, and then he saw Emma. The world stopped. For a moment that seemed to extend for eternity. Alexander James Sterling, doctor. Alexander James Sterling, renowned pediatric neurologist, son of one of the wealthiest families in the city, remained completely motionless, looking at the woman kneeling on the floor next to his son. His steel blue eyes, which Emma knew so well, widened with shock and disbelief. Emma felt as if all color had drained from her face. Her heart stopped for an instant, then shot off at a frantic rhythm she was sure everyone in the corridor could hear. There, standing before her after 10 long years, was the man who had been the love of her life in college. The man who had broken her heart when he chose family pressure and social status over the love they shared. "Emma?" Alexander's voice was little more than an incredulous whisper. "Emma, is it really you?" She couldn't respond immediately. Her throat seemed to have closed completely. There was Alexander, even more handsome than in her memories, but now with a maturity that didn't exist in their college days. The lines around his eyes indicated years of responsibility and perhaps sadness. He was taller, broader in the shoulders, with that confident posture of someone who had conquered everything he wanted in life. Everything, except the woman he had lost through pride. "Dr. Sterling," she finally managed to say, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. Instinctively, she stood up from the floor, smoothing her simple uniform and suddenly feeling very conscious of the stark difference between them. "Your son was here. He seemed to be lost. I was just... Daddy!" Tyler suddenly stood up and ran toward Alexander, still holding his dinosaur buddy. But instead of throwing himself into his father's arms like a typical child would do, he stopped a few steps away and began speaking rapidly, pointing toward Emma. The lady sang Mommy's song. Buddy liked the lady." Alexander knelt at his son's height, but his eyes remained fixed on Emma. She could see a storm of emotions passing across his face. Shock, confusion, something that could be regret, and a deep pain that she recognized because she felt the same. "She sang for you?" Alexander asked Tyler softly, though his question was clearly also directed at her. "Mommy's song," Tyler repeated, rocking slightly. "Buddy got happy. I got happy." Emma felt her heart clench upon hearing the mention of the child's mother. Of course, Alexander had married. Of course, he had moved on, built a family, become the successful doctor he always dreamed of being. And she was there, in her janitor's uniform, having abandoned the studies she loved so much because she had no choice when life crumbled around her. I should get back to work," she stammered, taking a step backward. "I'm glad he's okay. He's an adorable child." "Emma, wait!" Alexander stood up quickly, extending his hand as if wanting to prevent her from leaving. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about, Dr. Sterling," Emma replied, forcing her voice to sound firmer than she felt. "It's been 10 years. You built your life, I built mine. Your son was lost, I helped, now he's safe with you." But even while saying those words, she couldn't stop looking at Tyler. There was something about that boy that touched her maternal heart deeply. Maybe it was the vulnerability she recognized, or the way he had responded to her music. Maybe it was because, in his green eyes, she could see reflections of the Alexander she had known and loved. "Is the lady leaving?" Tyler asked suddenly, looking between Emma and Alexander. Buddy doesn't want the lady to leave. The innocence of the question cut through the tension in the air like a blade. Emma felt tears stinging her eyes and blinked rapidly to contain them. She couldn't cry. Not there, not in front of Alexander, not after all these years. "I have to work, sweetheart," she said gently to Tyler, crouching again to be at his height. "But it was very nice meeting you and Buddy." "Tyler, let's go home," Alexander said, his voice strangely tense. "It's very late for you to be awake." But Tyler didn't move. Instead, he did something that surprised both Alexander and Emma. He took off her gray cardigan and extended it to her. "So, you won't be cold," he said simply. Emma felt as if her heart was going to explode. The kindness of that child, so pure and innocent, contrasted painfully with the tension and unresolved feelings floating between her and Alexander. She took the cardigan with trembling hands. "Thank you, Tyler," she whispered. "You're very kind." Alexander observed the entire interaction with an indescribable expression on his face. Emma could feel his intense gaze upon her, but didn't dare look directly at him. There was too much history between them, too much pain, too many words that were never said. "Emma," he said one last time, and the way he pronounced her name made all her defenses almost crumble. It was the same tone he used when he whispered her name in college days, when the world was full of possibilities and they believed love could conquer any obstacle. But that time had passed. They were no longer the passionate students who dreamed together about the future. Now they were strangers, separated by more than just years, separated by choices, by different worlds, by lives that had taken opposite paths. "Good night, Dr. Sterling," she said formally, taking her cleaning cart. "Take good care of Tyler." And with that, Emma walked away down the corridor, each step echoing like a painful echo from the past. She could feel Alexander watching her until she disappeared around the corner. But she didn't turn around. She couldn't turn around. Because if she did, he would see the tears that now flowed freely down her cheeks, and she couldn't allow him to see how that encounter had shaken all the carefully constructed foundations of her new life. Behind her, Alexander stood in the corridor for long minutes, holding Tyler's small hand, trying to process what had just happened. The woman he had loved more than anything in the world, the woman he had lost through pride and family pressure, was there, working as a janitor in the hospital where he worked as a doctor, and she had cared for his son with a tenderness he hadn't seen in a long time. "Daddy, the lady left," Tyler said sadly, still looking in the direction where Emma had disappeared. "Yes, son," Alexander replied, his voice sounding distant even to himself. "She left." But as he took Tyler back home, a single question hammered incessantly in his mind. Would he have the courage this time not to let her go again? The rest of the dawn passed like a blur for Emma. She finished her shift mechanically, cleaning rooms and corridors without really seeing what she was doing. Her mind was trapped in that moment in the corridor, reliving every second, every word, every look. When she finally arrived at her small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of Chicago, it was already 6 in the morning, and the sun was beginning to rise. She sat on her simple bed, still wearing her uniform, and finally allowed all the repressed emotions to surface. She cried for the lost dreams, for the love that had ended, for the life that could have been different. She cried for the young couple they had been, and for the people they had become. And she cried for Tyler, that sweet boy who had touched her heart in just a few minutes and whom she would probably never see again. On the other side of the city, Alexander put Tyler to bed and stood at the window of his luxurious apartment, looking at the city awakening. He had achieved everything his parents wanted for him: status, money, professional recognition. But that dawn, seeing Emma again, he realized how empty his life had become. And somewhere between sleep and wakefulness, both Emma and Alexander wondered the same thing. Could it be possible that destiny was offering them a second chance? 5 days had passed since the encounter in the corridor, and Emma couldn't manage to get Alexander and Tyler out of her thoughts. Every time she walked through the 5th floor of the hospital during her night shift, she found herself instinctively glancing toward the place where she had found the boy. The scent of disinfectant now came accompanied by a melancholy she couldn't shake away, and her hands trembled slightly whenever she needed to clean near the office where she knew Alexander worked during the day. It was Friday, 2:48 in the morning, when Emma was organizing cleaning supplies in the storage room on the 5th floor. The place was small and stuffy, with tall shelves filled with cleaning products, towels, and hospital materials. The strong aroma of detergent mixed with the smell of clean cloth created an environment that normally calmed her. But that night, everything seemed different. She was counting bottles of disinfectant when she heard footsteps in the corridor. They weren't the firm, quick steps of doctors during the day, nor the silent walking of night nurses. They were hesitant steps, like someone who wasn't sure if they should be there. Emma frowned, peering through the crack in the door. It was unusual for there to be movement on that floor during her shift. Generally, only she and the security guards circulated through the corridors at that hour. That's when she saw him. Alexander was walking slowly down the corridor, his hands in the pockets of a dark, casual coat, so different from the impeccable suits she saw him wear during the day when she occasionally glimpsed him from afar. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his hands through it several times, and there was a tension in his shoulders that she recognized from college days. It was how he got when he was struggling with some internal problem. Emma felt her heart accelerate. Was he looking for her, or would it just be coincidence? She hid behind the door, trying to decide whether she should show herself or wait for him to leave. The rational part of her mind screamed for her to stay hidden, to avoid any confrontation that might reopen poorly healed wounds. But there was another part, smaller and more vulnerable, that still held the remains of the love she had felt for him. Emma? Alexander's voice resonated softly through the corridor, confirming her suspicions. He really was looking for her. Emma closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She couldn't hide forever, especially not in her own workplace. "I'm here," she replied, opening the storage room door and stepping into the corridor. The fluorescent light created soft shadows on her face, and she could see that Alexander seemed as nervous as she felt. He began, then stopped, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that was painfully familiar. "I didn't know if you still worked on this floor." "I do," she replied simply, crossing her arms over her chest in an unconsciously defensive posture. "Every night, from 2 to 6 in the morning." They remained silent for a moment, the weight of 10 years of separation floating between them like an invisible barrier. Alexander observed her with that intensity she remembered so well, as if he were trying to memorize every detail of her face. Emma, for her part, struggled to maintain a neutral expression, though inside she felt as if she were falling apart. "How have you been?" Alexander asked finally, his voice loaded with a gentleness that contrasted with the formality of their first moments together after the reunion. "Fine," Emma lied, lifting her chin slightly. "And you? How is Tyler?" Alexander's face softened immediately upon hearing his son's name. "He hasn't stopped talking about you for the last 5 days, he admitted. "He wants to know when he'll see the lady who sang again. It's the first time in months he's shown interest in someone new." Emma felt her heart clench. There was something in the way Alexander spoke about his son that suggested a deeper story, a pain she didn't know. "He's a special child," she said softly, "very sensitive and intelligent." "He's autistic," Alexander said directly, observing her reaction. "He was diagnosed at 4 years old. He has difficulties with social interactions, routine changes, physical contact. But with you," he stopped, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe it. "With you, it was different." Emma nodded, remembering her incomplete nursing training and the internship she had done in pediatrics. "I studied about autism spectrum disorders in college," she said. "I learned some approach techniques. Tyler responded well because I respected his boundaries and used appropriate strategies." The mention of college created a new layer of tension between them. Alexander lowered his gaze, and Emma could see an expression of regret cross his face. "College," he repeated slowly. "Emma, about that, about what happened." "You don't need to," she interrupted quickly. "Those were choices we made. You chose your path, I chose mine." "You didn't choose," Alexander said, his voice gaining an intensity that made Emma take a step back. "You were forced to abandon your studies. I found out about your parents, about the accident. I knew you had to work to support yourself and couldn't continue at the university." Emma felt as if she had received a punch in the stomach. How did he know? She had never told anyone the details of why she had abandoned her nursing degree. Not even at the time had she sought help or told her situation to the professors. "How did you—" she began, but couldn't finish the question. "Professor Williams," Alexander said softly. "He sought me out a few months after you stopped showing up to classes. He said you were one of the best students he had ever had, that it was unfair for you to have to abandon everything due to financial difficulties." The world seemed to spin around Emma. Professor Williams had been her mentor at the university, the only one who had noticed her difficulties and tried to help her. But she had been too proud to accept help, preferring to disappear silently rather than admit she couldn't pay tuition and support herself at the same time. "He told me you were working nights to pay for a rented room and couldn't manage with the mandatory internships," Alexander continued, taking a step closer. "He said you were the best pediatric nursing student he had ever seen." Tears began to form in Emma's eyes, but she blinked furiously to contain them. "So what?" she asked, her voice coming out harsher than she intended. "What does that change? You moved on with your life, graduated, got married, had a child. I moved on with mine. End of story." "I never got married," Alexander said abruptly. Emma stopped breathing. "What?" "I never got married," he repeated, his eyes fixed on hers. "Tyler, his mother died in childbirth. We never actually got married." The revelation hit Emma like a cold wave. All the assumptions she had made, all the additional pain she had felt imagining Alexander happy with another woman, building the family they had dreamed of together, all of that was wrong. "I don't understand," she whispered. Alexander sighed deeply, leaning against the corridor wall. "After we broke up, after all that confusion with my parents and the pressure about our different social backgrounds, I tried to follow the path they wanted for me. I graduated, started residency, and in the final year I met Victoria. She was the daughter of a colleague of my father's, from appropriate society." He made air quotes, with clear bitterness in his voice. "My parents adored her." Emma felt her stomach contract, but forced herself to keep listening. "Victoria got pregnant," Alexander continued. "It was an accident, but I took responsibility. We were going to get married after Tyler was born, but..." His voice failed. "She had complications during delivery, hemorrhage. We couldn't save her." "Alexander," Emma whispered, feeling a wave of compassion cross through all the pain and resentment she carried. "So there I was, at 22 years old, with a newborn baby and the guilt of never having truly loved his mother," Alexander said, his voice laden with old pain. "I spent the last 6 years raising Tyler alone, trying to be the best father possible to compensate for the fact that he never had a real mother." Emma leaned against the wall, feeling her legs weak. Alexander's story was much more complex and painful than she had imagined. And Tyler, that sweet boy who had touched her heart, was motherless, raised by a father who carried his own load of regrets. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Alexander moved a step closer, and she could smell the familiar scent of his cologne. Woody and clean, exactly as she remembered. "Because you need to know the truth," he said. "You need to know that not a single day has passed in the last 10 years without me thinking about you. You need to know that the decision to end our relationship was the worst I've ever made in my life." The tears Emma had been holding back finally began to roll down her cheeks. "But you ended it," she whispered. "You told me we were from different worlds, that it would never work, that your parents would never accept a poor girl like me. I was a 20-year-old idiot who didn't have the courage to face family pressure," Alexander admitted, his own voice choked. "I thought I was protecting you, that you'd be happier with someone from your own social level. I didn't know. Emma, I swear I didn't know about your parents, about the difficulties you were facing. If I had known..." "Oh, what?" she asked, a mixture of pain and anger coloring her voice. "You would have stayed with me out of pity." "I would have fought for you," Alexander exclaimed, his voice echoing through the empty corridor. I would have faced my parents. I would have found a way to help you. I would have done anything so we wouldn't lose what we had." They remained in silence for long minutes, just looking at each other through tears and years of accumulated pain. Emma could see the sincerity in Alexander's eyes, the genuine anguish he felt. But 10 years was a long time. They were different people now, with different lives, different responsibilities. "It's too late," she said finally. "Why?" Alexander asked, desperation clear in his voice. "Because look at us," Emma gestured between them. "You're a respected doctor with your own practice, probably earn more in a month than I earn in a year. I'm a janitor who didn't finish college. Your parents were right. We're from different worlds." "My parents were wrong about everything," Alexander said vehemently. "Money, status, none of that matters. You know what matters? The fact that in 5 minutes with Tyler, you managed to do something that I, with all my medical training and financial resources, haven't been able to do in months. You calmed him. You made him smile. You made him feel safe." Emma wiped the tears from her face, trying to regain composure. "That doesn't change our situation," she said. "Then change our situation," Alexander said, surprising her with the intensity of his voice. "Go back to college. Finish your nursing degree." "With what money?" Emma laughed bitterly. "Alexander, I can barely pay my rent working this job. How do you think I'm going to pay university tuition?" "I'll pay," he said immediately. Emma stared at him, shocked. "I don't want your charity," she said, her voice icy. "It's not charity," Alexander protested. "It's an investment. Tyler needs someone like you. He needs someone who understands his needs, who has patience, who knows how to communicate with him. And he hesitated. "I need you too." "Alexander, give me a chance," he interrupted. "Give us a chance. Let me help you go back to college, not out of charity or pity, but because you deserve to have the career you always wanted. And because Tyler deserves to have someone in his life who really cares about him." Emma closed her eyes, feeling as if she were in the middle of an emotional hurricane. Part of her wanted to accept, wanted to believe they could rebuild what they had lost. But another part, the part that had been hurt and had learned to protect itself, screamed for her to run before being hurt again. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Alexander nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. "Of course. But Emma," he called when she began to move away. "Tyler is going to be at the hospital tomorrow afternoon. He has a follow-up appointment at 3 o'clock. If you want to see him—" Emma nodded without turning around, walking quickly back to the storage room. She needed time to process everything she had heard, all the revelations that had turned her world upside down. But even while trying to convince herself it was better to keep her distance, a part of her heart had already made a decision. She would be there the next day. For Tyler, she told herself, just for Tyler. Meanwhile, Alexander stood in the corridor for long minutes after Emma had disappeared, wondering if he had done the right thing by opening his heart once more to the only woman he had truly loved. He knew he was risking not only his own heart, but Tyler's as well. His son had become attached to Emma in a way he had never seen before, and if she decided to leave their lives again, the consequences could be devastating. But when he remembered the expression of peace on Tyler's face when Emma had sung to him, when he remembered her natural kindness and the way she had cared for his son without asking for anything in return, Alexander knew it was worth the risk. Some loves were too strong to be denied twice in a lifetime. Emma woke up on Saturday at 11 in the morning with a heavy heart and a mind in turmoil. She had slept only 3 hours after her shift at the hospital, but the sleep had been restless, filled with confused dreams, where she saw herself again in the university corridors with Alexander, young and in love, not knowing that life would separate them so cruelly. The small one-bedroom apartment she rented in Uptown was silent, only the distant sound of Chicago traffic filtering through the windows with simple glass panes. She got up from the twin bed, with a mattress already deformed by time, and walked to the small kitchen, where she prepared strong coffee in an old percolator, one of the few luxuries she allowed herself. The rich, thick aroma of coffee calmed her momentarily, but soon thoughts about Alexander and Tyler returned to invade her mind. Every word from the previous night's conversation echoed in her head like a persistent echo that wouldn't quiet down. Tyler had an appointment at 3 in the afternoon. Alexander had mentioned that almost casually, but Emma knew there was an intention behind that information. He wanted her to show up. He wanted her to see Tyler again. And the scariest part was that she really wanted to see that green-eyed boy who had touched her heart in such an unexpected way. Emma looked at herself in the cracked mirror of the small bathroom, observing her tired reflection. Her brown hair was disheveled, there were dark circles under her eyes, and her skin looked pale. She looked nothing like the young nursing student she had been 10 years ago, when Alexander looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Now she was just a 28-year-old woman who worked as a janitor to survive, who had abandoned her dreams because life had become too cruel. But when she remembered Tyler holding his dinosaur buddy, crying in the cold hospital corridor, something stirred inside her chest. That boy needed care, understanding, someone who understood his special needs. And Alexander carried the weight of raising an autistic child alone, dealing with his own guilt and regrets. At 2:50 in the afternoon, Emma found herself walking through the corridors of Mercy Children's Hospital, wearing her only decent clothes. A simple navy blue blouse and black pants that were already worn, but still clean and pressed. She had pulled her hair back in a low bun and applied a light layer of pink lipstick, one of the only cosmetics she owned. She felt out of place there during the day, when the hospital was full of important doctors, impeccably dressed nurses, and patients who clearly belonged to a very different economic world than hers. She hesitated in front of the 5th-floor reception, where a young blonde with perfectly manicured nails looked at her with poorly disguised curiosity. The place seemed even more luxurious during the day. The marble shone under natural light, coming through large windows. Expensive paintings on the walls took on more vivid colors, and the scent of fresh flowers from decorative arrangements mixed with the soft fragrance of an expensive air freshener. "May I help you?" the receptionist asked, her voice polite, but with a tone suggesting Emma didn't belong there. Emma began, then stopped. How to explain that she was there to see a child she had met by chance? How to explain her connection with Dr. Alexander Sterling without sounding completely inappropriate? "Emma," the familiar voice made her turn quickly. Alexander was standing at the entrance to the hallway leading to the offices, wearing an impeccable white coat over a light blue shirt and discreet tie. He was taller and more imposing during the day, with that confident posture of someone who was in their professional element. But when his eyes met hers, the same vulnerability from the previous night appeared on his face. "You came," he said, and there was a mixture of relief and surprise in his voice. "I said I would think about it," Emma replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "And I thought maybe Tyler would like to see me." Alexander smiled, and it was as if all the formal tension of the environment dissolved momentarily. "He's going to be very happy. Actually, he hasn't stopped asking about you since yesterday. Want to come with me?" Emma nodded, following Alexander down the corridor toward his office. She could feel the curious looks from hospital staff and knew they were wondering who this simple woman was that the renowned Dr. Sterling was personally escorting. Embarrassment burned her cheeks, but she forced herself to keep her head high. Alexander's office was exactly what she would expect. Spacious, elegantly decorated, with a polished mahogany desk, shelves full of medical books, and framed diplomas on the walls. There were educational toys scattered in a specific area for children, and a comfortable sofa where presumably parents sat during consultations. But what most caught Emma's attention was Tyler. The boy was sitting on the floor, organizing a collection of toy dinosaurs in perfect rows. He wore a green shirt with a Tyrannosaurus image and small jeans, and his brown hair was carefully combed. Next to him was Buddy, his favorite plush dinosaur, carefully positioned among the other toys. "Tyler," Alexander said softly, "look who came to see you." Tyler looked up, and when he saw Emma, his entire face lit up with a smile that made her heart race. "The lady who sang," he exclaimed, standing up and running toward her but stopping at a respectful distance, as was characteristic of children on the autism spectrum. "You came to see Buddy?" "Of course I came," Emma said, kneeling to be at his height. "How are you, Tyler, and how is Buddy?" "Buddy is happy today," Tyler replied, taking the plush dinosaur and showing it to her. "He told me he wanted to see you again." Emma smiled genuinely for the first time in days. "I'm so glad he's happy. And you? How are you feeling?" Tyler tilted his head to the side, considering the question with the seriousness that only children can demonstrate. "I was sad because Daddy said maybe you wouldn't come anymore. But now I'm happy because you're here." Alexander, who was observing the interaction standing next to his desk, felt his heart clench. Tyler's brutal honesty sometimes surprised him, and seeing how his son had become attached to Emma in such a short time was both comforting and terrifying. "Can I show you my dinosaurs?" Tyler asked Emma, taking her small hand and gently pulling toward the direction of his toys. "Of course," Emma replied, allowing him to guide her. They sat on the floor together, and Tyler began explaining in detail about each dinosaur in his collection. He knew the scientific names, the periods they lived in, their diets and physical characteristics. Emma listened with genuine attention, asking questions and making comments that showed she was really interested. Alexander watched, fascinated, as Tyler opened up with her in a way that rarely happened with other people. "This one here is a Parasaurolophus," Tyler said, holding a dinosaur with a long crest on its head. "It ate plants and could make different sounds with its crest. Want to hear?" Tyler made a deep sound, imitating what he imagined would be the dinosaur's call. Emma laughed, a genuine and musical sound that made both Tyler and Alexander smile. "Very good," she said. "You know so much about dinosaurs. I bet you could be a paleontologist when you grow up." "What's a paleontologist?" Tyler asked, his green eyes shining with curiosity. "It's someone who studies dinosaurs and other animals that lived a long time ago. They dig in the ground to find old bones and discover how those animals lived." "I want to be a paleontologist," Tyler said immediately, with the unique enthusiasm of children. "Daddy, can I be a paleontologist?" Alexander laughed, a deep and genuine laugh that Emma hadn't heard in 10 years. "Of course you can, son. You can be anything you want." "And can Emma help me find dinosaur bones?" Tyler asked, looking between the two adults with hope in his eyes. The question created a moment of loaded silence. Emma looked at Alexander, who observed her with an intense expression. She could see the silent plea in his eyes, the desire for her to say yes, for her to become part of Tyler's life somehow. "I would love to help you learn more about dinosaurs," Emma said carefully. "But you know I work at night, right? So maybe we can see each other sometimes when it works for all of us." Tyler nodded seriously, as if he were processing very important information. "Okay, Buddy also wants you to come more often." During the next hour, Emma played with Tyler, while Alexander finalized some notes in his medical record. She helped the boy organize his dinosaurs by geological periods, sang again the lullaby he had liked, and even managed to get him to try some motor coordination activities in a playful way. Alexander observed everything with a mixture of admiration and pain. Emma had a natural gift with children, especially with Tyler. She managed to communicate with him on his level without speaking in an infantile or condescending way, but also without overwhelming him with too much information. It was exactly the type of specialized care Tyler needed, and that Alexander, even with all his medical training, sometimes struggled to provide. "Tyler!" Alexander said finally, when he saw it was almost 4:30 in the afternoon. "We need to go home. Sarah is waiting for us for snack time." Tyler made a face, clearly not wanting his time with Emma to end. "Can Emma come with us?" he asked. Alexander looked at Emma, and she could see the silent invitation in his eyes, but she could also see something more, a vulnerability that wasn't there 10 years ago when he was just a young medical student. Now he was a single father, trying to do the best possible for his son, and she could see that he genuinely believed she could make a difference in Tyler's life. "I need to get ready for work," Emma said softly. "My shift starts at 2 in the morning." "But can you come another day?" Tyler insisted, holding Buddy against his chest. "Buddy will be sad if you don't come." Emma looked at those hopeful green eyes and felt her heart melt completely. "If your daddy allows it, I can come visit you again," she said. "Of course," Alexander said immediately. "You can come whenever you want." As they prepared to leave, Tyler did something unexpected. He walked to Emma and very carefully put Buddy in her hands. "So you don't forget about us," he said simply. Emma felt tears stinging her eyes. She knew how important that plush dinosaur was for Tyler, how it was his comfort and security object. The fact that he was offering it to her was a gesture of trust and affection that touched her deeply. "I can't take Buddy," she said gently. "He needs to stay with you, but I promise I won't forget about you." Tyler considered this for a moment, then nodded and took Buddy back. "Okay, but if you forget, Buddy will be very angry." Emma laughed, gently stroking the boy's hair, a gesture he not only allowed but seemed to enjoy. "I won't forget," she promised. When they left the office together, walking down the corridor toward the exit, they looked like a family. Tyler walked between them, holding Alexander's hand with one and swinging Buddy with the other, chattering about his favorite dinosaurs. Emma walked beside them, smiling at the boys' enthusiastic observations, and Alexander watched everything with an expression of contentment he hadn't felt in a long time. "Emma," Alexander said when they reached the hospital parking garage, "are you sure you don't want to come with us? Sarah always prepares snacks for an army, and Tyler would love to show you his other toys." Emma hesitated. Part of her desperately wanted to accept, wanted to see where Alexander and Tyler lived, wanted to continue being part of that moment of family happiness. But another part, the practical and protective part that had learned to dominate over the years, warned her about the dangers of getting too involved. "I really need to rest before work," she said, "but thank you for the invitation." "So tomorrow?" Alexander asked. "It's Sunday, you must have off. We could take Tyler to Lincoln Park Zoo, see well, there aren't dinosaurs there, but there are other interesting animals." "Are there crocodiles?" Tyler asked animatedly. "Crocodiles are cousins of dinosaurs." Emma looked between father and son, seeing the hope in both faces, and felt her resolution wavering. Yes, there are some reptiles at Lincoln Park Zoo," she said. "So you're going to come?" Tyler insisted. Emma looked at Alexander, who observed her with that familiar intensity, and made a decision she knew could change everything. "All right," she said. "I'll go." Tyler screamed with joy, jumping in place with Buddy secure in his arms. Alexander smiled, a genuine and radiant smile that made her remember exactly why she had fallen in love with him 10 years ago. "I'll pick you up at 10, he asked. "I can meet you there," Emma said quickly, "at the main entrance at 10:30. Alexander nodded, though she could see he would have preferred to pick her up. But she still wasn't ready for him to see where she lived, for him to see how different their lives really were. That night, while working her shift at the hospital, Emma found herself smiling for no apparent reason. For the first time in years, she had something to look forward to eagerly. A trip to the zoo might not seem like much, but for someone who had spent the last 10 years simply surviving day by day, it was like a ray of sunshine breaking through dark clouds. On the other side of the city, Alexander put Tyler to bed after reading 3 books about dinosaurs and listening to a detailed explanation about why crocodiles were related to dinosaurs. When the boy finally fell asleep, hugging Buddy, Alexander stood in the bedroom doorway, watching his son sleep peacefully. Tyler hadn't had nightmares for the last 3 nights, something rare for him. He hadn't had anxiety attacks during the day. He had eaten better, slept better, smiled more, and Alexander knew exactly what had caused this improvement. Emma. For the first time in 6 years of solo parenting, Alexander began to imagine what it would be like to have someone to share responsibilities with, someone who understood Tyler as well as he did, someone who genuinely loved them. And for the first time in 10 years, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he and Emma could have a second chance. What neither of them knew was that this trip to the zoo would be the first step toward a journey that would lead them back to each other, and that Tyler would be the little Cupid who would finally heal the broken hearts of 2 adults who had never stopped loving each other. Sunday morning at Lincoln Park Zoo was perfect. The sun shone between scattered white clouds, the temperature was pleasant, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of green leaves and wildflowers. Emma arrived at the main entrance at 10:20, wearing her best casual outfit, a simple white blouse and a navy blue skirt she had bought on sale years ago, but which was still in good condition. She had spent more time than usual fixing her hair and had even put on some mascara, small gestures of vanity she hadn't done in a long time. When she saw Alexander approaching with Tyler, her heart raced. Alexander wore a light blue polo shirt and dark jeans, looking more relaxed and younger than in his professional environment. Tyler ran ahead, dressed in a dinosaur print t-shirt and carrying a small backpack shaped like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, probably filled with his favorite dinosaurs. "Emma!" Tyler shouted when he saw her, running toward her with Buddy secure in one of his hands. "You came!" Buddy got very happy. "Of course I came," Emma replied, kneeling to be at his height. "I promised, didn't I? And how are you 2 today?" "We're great," Alexander said, approaching with a genuine smile. "Tyler couldn't sleep well last night from excitement about today. I brought all my carnivorous dinosaurs," Tyler announced, opening his backpack to show a collection of small toy dinosaurs. "Because at the zoo, there are real carnivorous animals, just like dinosaurs were." Emma laughed, touched by Tyler's childish logic and the way he connected everything to his special interest in dinosaurs. "How smart. Let's see how many carnivorous animals we can find today." They spent the next 4 hours exploring the zoo like a real family. Tyler was fascinated by the alligators, which he insisted on calling dinosaur cousins, and spent 15 minutes explaining to other curious visitors about how crocodilians were the closest living relatives to dinosaurs. Emma and Alexander took turns answering the boys' endless questions, and she was impressed by the infinite patience Alexander showed with his son. At the Big Cats exhibit, Tyler hid behind Emma when the lion roared, but refused to leave because he wanted to study predatory behavior. Emma instinctively protected him with her body, and when Alexander saw the scene, his son trusting Emma enough to hide behind her and her naturally protecting him, he felt his heart clench with emotion. "Can I hold your hand?" Tyler asked Emma when they were walking toward the bird area. "There are lots of people here and I don't like crowds." "Of course you can," Emma replied, extending her hand. Tyler took it firmly and on the other side held Alexander's hand. They walked like this for the rest of the zoo, Tyler in the middle, holding both adults' hands, chattering animatedly about every animal and plant they saw. During lunch at a cafe near the zoo, while Tyler was distracted, coloring a dinosaur drawing that Alexander had brought, the 2 adults finally had a chance to talk for real. "He's different with you," Alexander said softly, watching Tyler concentrated on his drawing. "Calmer, more open. In 2 days, you've achieved more progress with him than some therapists have in months. He just needs someone who understands that his brain works differently," Emma replied. "It's not that he's difficult, he just needs appropriate communication strategies." Alexander observed her while she spoke, noticing how her eyes lit up when she talked about childcare and neurological development. It was obvious she was born for this, that she had a natural gift for working with special children. "Emma," he said, his voice becoming more serious, "I was serious about helping you go back to college." She stopped eating, looking at him with a mixture of hope and fear in her eyes. "Alexander, listen to me," he said, leaning forward. "It's not charity and it's not pity. It's an investment in the future, mine, Tyler's and yours. You have a natural talent for this. Tyler needs someone like you, and he hesitated, I need you too. But what if things go wrong between us?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible. "What if we start over and it doesn't work? Tyler will get hurt. I'll get hurt. You'll get hurt." Alexander extended his hand across the table and covered hers. "What if it goes right?" he asked. "What if this time we manage to make it work? Emma, I spent 10 years regretting letting you go. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice." Tyler looked up from his drawing at that moment, observing the two adults' hands together on the table. "Are you going to get married?" he asked with the innocent curiosity of children. Both Emma and Alexander blushed, but neither withdrew their hand. "Tyler," Alexander said, embarrassed. "But I want you to get married," Tyler continued, "so Emma can live with us and can help me with dinosaurs every day. And Buddy really likes her." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. Tyler's simplicity and honesty cut directly through all her defenses and fears. "Tyler," she said softly, "these things are complicated for adults." "Why?" he asked, tilting his head to the side. "You like each other. I like both of you. Buddy likes both of you. It doesn't seem complicated." Alexander laughed, shaking his head. "Sometimes I think Tyler is wiser than both of us together," he said. 4 months later, Emma was on the 5th floor of Mercy Children's Hospital, but this time not as a janitor. She wore a new nursing student uniform, an impeccable white tunic and comfortable shoes that Alexander had insisted on buying for her. After many conversations, tears, fears, and hopes, she had accepted his help to return to college. It wasn't easy to swallow her pride, but when she saw how happy Tyler was to know she would be around more frequently, she knew she had made the right decision. Things between her and Alexander had developed slowly, respectfully. They were careful with each other, aware that they were no longer the passionate 20-year-olds they had been. But each day that passed, the connection between them strengthened. Emma had dinner at their house 3 times a week. Alexander picked her up from college when possible, and Tyler had officially become her biggest fan. That Tuesday afternoon, Emma was finishing some pediatric internship when she saw Alexander walking down the corridor toward her, but there was something different about his posture. He seemed nervous, anxious, as if he were carrying some important secret. "Hi," he said when he got close to her. "Are you done for today?" "I'm done." "Why do you have that strange look?" Alexander smiled, but she could see his hands were trembling slightly. "Come with me," he said, taking her hand and guiding her down the corridor. They walked to the same place where they had reunited 4 months ago, the corridor near the elevators where Emma had found Tyler crying. But now there was a difference. Tyler was there, sitting in the same spot, but this time he was smiling and holding a small object in his hands. "Tyler?" Emma said, confused. "What are you doing here?" Tyler stood up, walking toward her with a smile that illuminated his entire face. "Emma," he said formally, as if he had rehearsed, "Daddy has a very important question for you." That's when Alexander knelt on the corridor floor, in the same place where Emma had knelt to comfort Tyler months ago. In his hands, he held a small navy blue velvet box. "Emma Claire Watson," he said, his voice choked with emotion. 10 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go. During all these years, there wasn't a single day I didn't think about you, didn't regret my cowardice and stupid pride." Emma covered her mouth with her hands, tears already streaming down her cheeks. 4 months ago, destiny gave us a second chance through Tyler. You didn't just come back into my life, you became the missing piece in our family. Tyler loves you, I love you, and I can no longer imagine our life without you." He opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant engagement ring, a solitaire with a modest diamond, but which sparkled under the corridor lights. "Will you marry me?" Alexander asked. "Will you be my wife and Tyler's mother? Will you build with us the family we always dreamed of having?" Emma was crying so much she could barely speak. She looked at Tyler, who was practically jumping with anxiety, then at Alexander, who awaited her answer with his heart in his eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want to." Tyler screamed with joy, running toward them and throwing himself into their arms in a triple hug. Alexander put the ring on Emma's finger with trembling hands, and when they stood up, they kissed right there in the hospital corridor, while Tyler clapped and shouted, "Buddy, they said yes! Emma is going to be our family forever!" 2 years later, the Holy Name Cathedral was decorated with simple but elegant arrangements of white roses and baby's breath. The afternoon sun entered through the Gothic stained glass windows, creating a kaleidoscope of soft colors over the wooden pews. It wasn't an extravagant ceremony, just families and close friends, but it was full of love and meaning. Emma walked toward the altar wearing a simple but elegant wedding dress, white satin with delicate lace sleeves. She was radiant, with her hair pulled back in a low bun, adorned with small white flowers. But what most caught attention was her smile, genuine, happy, complete. Tyler, now 8 years old, walked proudly ahead of her as ring-bearer, carrying the rings on a special pillow shaped like a dinosaur that he had personally chosen. He wore a small navy blue suit and a tie with a discreet dinosaur print, a compromise between formality and his unique personality. Alexander waited at the altar, impeccable in a dark suit, but his eyes were fixed only on Emma. When she reached his side, he held her hands and whispered, "You look beautiful." "You both look beautiful," she replied, looking between him and Tyler. The ceremony was simple but moving. When it came time for vows, Alexander spoke first. "Emma, you taught me that true love knows no social barriers, doesn't care about money or status. You taught me that a family is built with affection, patience, and daily dedication. I promise to love you, respect you, and value you every day of our life. I promise to be a good husband to you, and together build a family based on love and mutual respect." Emma, with tears in her eyes, responded, "Alexander, you and Tyler showed me that it's never too late to start over, that love can heal any wound, and that the most beautiful families are those built with choice and affection. I promise to love you both unconditionally, to be a good wife and a good mother, and to do everything in my power so that our family is always a place of love, understanding, and happiness." When the priest asked for the rings, Tyler approached solemnly. But instead of just delivering the rings, he did something that wasn't programmed. He pulled Buddy from his pocket and placed him in Emma's hands. "Buddy wants to stay with you forever too," he said loud enough for the entire church to hear. There were emotional laughs among the guests, and Emma knelt to hug Tyler, whispering, "Thank you, my love. I'll take very good care of Buddy." "Now you're my real mom?" Tyler asked, still at the microphone. "Now I'm your real mom," Emma confirmed, her voice choked. When they finally kissed as husband and wife, Tyler applauded enthusiastically, and the entire church rose in ovation. They left the church hand in hand, Alexander, Emma, and Tyler, finally forming the complete family they had all desired. 5 years later, Dr. Alexander Sterling and nurse Emma Sterling were at the same Mercy Children's Hospital where everything had begun, but now as professional colleagues. Emma had graduated with honors in nursing and specialized in pediatric neurology. She was known at the hospital for her exceptional ability with children on the autism spectrum and frequently received cases from other doctors who knew her expertise. That afternoon, they were finishing a joint shift when they saw a familiar scene in the corridor, a small child crying, lost and scared, while parents searched desperately. Without hesitation, both Alexander and Emma approached to help. "Some cycles repeat," Alexander murmured to Emma as she knelt to calm the child. "But this time we know exactly what to do." "And this time," Emma replied, smiling at him over the head of the child who now stopped crying in her arms, "we do it together." At home, Tyler, now 13 years old and still passionate about dinosaurs, was finishing a school project on paleontology when his parents arrived. He had grown into a confident and intelligent teenager who still had autistic characteristics, but had learned to navigate the world with the unconditional support of his family. "How was work today?" he asked, looking up from his fossil books. "It was good," Emma replied, kissing the top of his head. "We helped a family like ours." "A family that found each other by chance?" Tyler asked with a mischievous smile. "A family that found each other by destiny," Alexander corrected, hugging his wife and son. While they prepared dinner together that night, Alexander making the salad, Emma preparing the main dish, and Tyler setting the table with mathematical precision, they looked exactly like what they were, a complete, happy and fulfilled family. Buddy, the plush dinosaur that had witnessed the beginning of everything, was proudly positioned on the living room shelf, along with family photos from various happy moments, wedding, graduations, trips, birthdays. He had become the silent symbol of how true love can overcome any obstacle, and how the most beautiful families are those built with choice, dedication, and infinite affection. That night, when Tyler was already sleeping and Alexander and Emma were lying in their bed, talking about plans for the next day, Alexander pulled his wife closer to him. "Do you regret anything?" he asked softly. "Nothing," Emma replied without hesitation. "Not even the difficult years, because they brought us here, to this life, to this family." "I love you," Alexander said, kissing her forehead. "I love you both," she replied. "Forever." And there in the comforting darkness of the room they shared, surrounded by the love of their complete family, they knew they had found something many people search for their entire lives: true love, a second chance, and a family built not just by blood, but by choice, dedication, and an affection that grew every day. The boy who had cried lost in a hospital corridor had become the Cupid who brought together two broken hearts. The janitor who had comforted a child in crisis had become the beloved wife and dedicated mother. The proud doctor who had lost his great love through cowardice had become the loving husband who learned that a person's worth isn't measured by their social position. And they all lived happily ever after, proving that some love stories are too strong to be destroyed by time, distance, or circumstances. They just wait for the right moment, the perfect second chance, and a little plush dinosaur named Buddy to witness the miracle of reunion. Final. This has been another story that shows us how true love can overcome any obstacle and how it's never too late to start over. If you enjoyed this touching story, don't forget to leave your like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one. In the comments, tell us, do you believe in second chances in love? Have you experienced any similar situation? We want to know your opinion. Until the next story, and remember, true love always finds its way back. The end.